I was very stuck in my masculine, like very driven, assertive, go-getter, action-oriented, like leader, which are not necessarily bad qualities, right? But if they're not balanced, that can potentially create a lot of problems. And for me, it wasn't in a balanced way. Like that didn't being all that way did not feel the most aligned and the most natural for me. And
Lauren, welcome to the show.
thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. My first and most important question is, how are you doing? Like, actually, for real, Lauren, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I went to a couple trade shows and like business events and things like that the last week. So as you know, when you do things like that, it stretches you a lot and not as much sleep. So I'm coming off of my house being a little bit messy right now, but all good things, like busy in a very good way. Um, so yeah, so I think I'm really, really good and looking forward to like some spaciousness and like to like settle back into things.
Do you consider yourself an extrovert or an introvert or a little bit of both?
Definitely a little bit of both. I used to be, I would say like 95% extroverted and like couldn't go a whole day being at home by myself or else I'd get sad. And COVID, both COVID and healing, which a lot of healing and growth happened during COVID for me, that allowed me to really grow my introvert muscle. And so I would say now, like, I love being by myself and staying in and stuff like that. So definitely a mix of both, but I love, but at my core, extroverted for sure.
Mm. What did you learn about yourself? Or maybe what were you most scared of about potentially being by yourself before you went through that healing journey, let's
Mm.
say?
I definitely used to be an overthinker. And so even when I was by myself, a lot of the times I would like, okay, well, I have a podcast on and I have to be learning something, or I'm going to put a TV show that I've seen a million times just to like run. So it's like, I'm not just alone, you know? And so I think it was this kind of overthinking and maybe like an underlying anxiety and stuff like that. And so that's a lot of what it was, I think, just not wanting to just like sit with myself and my stuff and feeling
Mm.
like overwhelmed by like how fast my mind would go and stuff like that.
Hello, my friend. Before we jump straight into the episode, I would love to share the sponsors of this podcast. And the sponsors of this podcast are all the businesses that I've created that are really part of the ecosystem that run this whole thing. And at the top of that list is Patreon. Patreon is the home of our exclusive community where we do bonus episodes, live streams, Q&As, and merch discounts, and so much more. Patreon is the number one way to support this podcast and to support my mental health nonprofit called You Are Loved. Next, we have my clothing brand called Shop for Everybody. Every hat and every t-shirt you see me wear on every single episode of this podcast is from Shop for Everybody. It's the home of For the Dads, For the Moms, all Something for Everybody merch, and it's the home of all You Are Loved merch. So that's shopforeverybody.com. And the last thing is my sports performance brand called Champions Adjust. Again, if you see anything Champions Adjust related, it's all found at champsadjust.com. It also has its own podcast. We also do a sports show through Champions Adjust. And if you're looking for any mindset or mental skills classes, they can all be found at champsadjust.com. And so if you want to stay up to date on everything that we're doing here with all of the businesses that I'm involved in, please go to aaronmashbitz.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thank you. Now, on to the episode, completely uninterrupted and ad-free. Here we go. I mean, I think that's a perennial problem for most people in the modern world. And
Yep.
and then I don't think it's I don't think it's a character flaw. I think it's sort of
Yeah.
a design flaw of the world. And so it's like
Yeah.
almost having to push against what might be normal to be alone. And I think there's a huge difference of like actively like taking yourself on a date or going to a movie and less like really being alone. Because I
Hmm.
talk to a lot of young men and they are very lonely, not on purpose,
Mm,
not because they want to be, but because
yeah.
that's sort of the circumstance that they're in. And so I think those distinctions are also important to be made. And I think also like thinking of like not as a character flaw, like you're defective human being because you can't be alone. It's like we have a lot of stimulation all the
Right.
time, and being able to sort of shut that down for just yeah, a minute less potentially could be helpful as you scale up towards like not being on your phone maybe for 8 instead of 8 hours, it's like 7 hours and 42 minutes. Like, that's a big leap.
Yeah.
14 minutes by yourself, raw dogging it, as they say, can
Yeah.
be, very challenging. So, I don't know, were there any tricks, hacks, that's a bad word, tools, let's say, that's a better word, that you discovered to be more
I mean,
comfortable spending time by yourself?
honestly, I don't know if it would have happened. I mentioned COVID. I don't know if it would have happened if I hadn't been forced to be by myself for quite a bit. So for me during COVID, I live in Los Angeles. So LA shut down very dramatically during that time. And in within the first like 2 months of COVID happening, obviously, like, everything shut down and I decided to end my marriage. So I went
Mm,
from having a very, like, full active life, going to the gym every day, like, a lot going on, and a husband to then home, you can't go anywhere, like, so many of my friends as well have online businesses, so a lot of them, we traveled a lot during COVID, but we would, like, get out of town or people moved and stuff, so went from, like, very full life, friends in town, husband, all of that to, okay, decided to end my marriage. So now it's just me on my own with my dog that I ended up fostering and then adopting, but it's just me on my own. Even friends have left. And so for me, it was like I had to figure it out. And so I don't know if I would have chosen like, oh, I'm too go, go, go or whatnot. Too much going on. I should really practice to just like sit with myself more. I probably would have gotten there at some point because I have always been or for a long time been very interested in personal growth and stuff like that and pursuing healing, but I think it was just, like, out of circumstance, like, I had to, and I had to figure it out, and there was no other option than to be with myself a lot more, and so I chose to, like, "Okay, well, then I'm gonna, like, let's face it," because of course, even circumstantially, you could still choose to, well, I'm gonna avoid or numb out whatever it is, but chose to, okay, you know what? This is the situation we're in. We just made that major, major life altering decision. Let's lean in and do the healing work and face this stuff.
mm. Yeah, I've heard you speak about your divorce a little bit before, and, like,
Mhm.
I know you mentioned, like, nothing sort of catastrophic happened, like, you wouldn't consider it like a bad marriage that sort of
Right.
forced you out of it, but what were some of those things that you were feeling that someone also might be feeling, maybe not in a marriage, but also in a relationship that they're, like,
Yeah.
mildly unhappy in? Because that's, like, a really important sort of detail about life. We'll take the mild unhappiness rather than just like try something new that might not work out. So it's almost better
Mhm.
that we sort of reach rock bottom because it's like, where the fuck else am I going to do? Right. And so
Yeah.
were you sort of in that mild state of unhappiness, or what was going on there?
Yeah, I would say it was we had a good relationship in a lot of ways and had some of our own like big problems and things like that, right? But at the time when and it was my decision. At the time when I got to that place, it was kind of like, yeah, things are good and we've recovered from that incident or that trauma or that struggle, whatever it was. But then I was like, "Oh, but this doesn't like it does it feels very far from where we it felt very far from where we were at the point to get to great, right? And I want like an exceptional great life, relationship, marriage, all of that the gap between good and great felt really far and I didn't have confidence that we would close the gap.
Mm,
And for me, though, some of the underlying, like I guess the what happened or why or what that sort of thing is, and this is why I do so much of what I do with working with women is we had a very like fundamental kind of mismatch in like our masculine feminine energy. And not his fault, not my fault when we met when I was in my very early 20s and, we both you only know what you know at the time, right? So doing the best you can with the information that you have. And at the time, like I was very stuck in my masculine, like very driven, assertive, go-getter, action-oriented, like leader, which is not are not necessarily bad qualities, right? But if they're not balanced, that can potentially create a lot of problems. And for me, it wasn't in a balanced way. Like that didn't being all that way did not feel the most aligned and the most natural for me. And so when I started doing a lot of that healing work to kind of like balance out myself and be more in my feminine, I realized, oh gosh, like we're not, something's missing here, because when I was the way that I was, I attracted a partner who very much complimented me, right? And so was I was very stuck in my masculine, so I attracted a partner who was in many ways in his feminine energy, which again, like for the audience and people listening, that has nothing to do with like how we're presenting or anything like that. It's really like your internal energetic balance, like how you think, sometimes how you act and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of what it came down to. And so as I started doing a lot of the inner work on myself to grow and like heal a lot of the reasons why I was operating that way, it made it clear that, oh, there's a gap, right? And I felt like I was very much lacking that like strong, assertive masculine leadership in our relationship.
Mm, okay. Interesting. So then, you got that divorce, and then where's the gap between that and maybe you starting all your coaching businesses? And then we'll get sort of into specifics there. Was that already happening? Were you already coaching, or were you just using some of the stuff that worked on you and then translating that into people that were in your sort of circle and things like that?
Yeah, so I had already been doing some, I used to have a fitness business, so I'd already been doing some coaching in terms of fitness, like diet, nutrition, workouts, that kind of stuff, which, as you know, because I know you have a fitness background as well, it's not, um it's so much more than just telling somebody, "Here's what you should eat and here's how you should work out," right? Like, you're getting into, like, the why, into their wounds and, like, their mindset, all of that. Like, it's so much more than just eat this, move this way. Right. And so I was starting to do a lot of like mindset coaching already because of that. And I've always been somebody who likes to share on social media and have always had a lot of people, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing for fitness? What are you doing this? Da, 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 right. And so I've always been a pretty natural sharer and have people asking, what I'm up to. And I had started getting into more of the personal development coaching. I was doing a lot of it for myself and personal growth stuff for myself, but started to kind of get into it a little bit with clients more. And then with the end of my marriage, with the divorce, definitely propelled me into more healing for myself, and then shifting more into a life coaching aspect, just because again, I'm sharing my journey, I'm sharing what I'm learning, all of that, and just naturally having people come to me asking for support with similar kinds of things. And then a couple years ago, did a somatic healing and somatic coaching certification so that I could really, one, like deepen my own healing and understanding and growth, and then also be able to, pay it forward and support other people with deeper healing as well.
Fantastic. All right. This is probably the most important question. Well, even though I already
All
said
right.
that, but this whole boss babe culture has gotten super
Yeah.
popular on social. The phrase is like really popular. We can actually talk about what boss babe culture is in a second, but why do you think that became popular, and why do you think that sort of women became attracted to that idea about themselves and their success and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Such a good question. And I think that, I mean, like going all the way back to like the feminist movement, and I'm not going to get into too many weeds and details of that, but I think there were so many amazing things that came out of that. Of course, like equal rights under the law, like women being able to do more than just be at home. And not to say that just being at home is a bad thing or an easy thing, but prior, there weren't that many options for women to choose from, right? And so I think with the feminist movement gave a lot of women the option to choose, right? More choices. But I also think that there were a lot of, I don't know, missteps or a lot of things that didn't ultimately serve women, right? Like this idea that, oh, yes, like equal rights, equality, feminism, that kind of stuff, like we can be just as good as men or we're just as whatever it is. And like, sure, and in our own way, like not going and being independent and powerful and strong and all of that in the same ways that men do, because we're different, right? And so I think there was this idea or this message. And I say this from, I think, a privileged standpoint of being like living with all that already done, and not like our parents, grandparents, and stuff like that, who maybe didn't have the same rights, privileges, you name it. So I can speak from this position of having had so many choices, all the options and choices in my life that I could have wanted, right? But I do think that like kind of girl power idea that came with feminism encouraged a lot of women to behave like men, which is, I don't think, the goal, right? Or like, oh, to be successful out in the world, you have to go act like men. And unfortunately, because of how at least our Western world is set up, in a lot of ways to be successful in business or whatever it is, like, yes, you do need to lean into some more of your masculine traits and qualities and behaviors and that kind of stuff. But I think it did push a lot of women um, to try and be like men or to try and act like men rather than really like amplifying our innate differences and that we can be very strong as women and in our own like feminine essence. So that's something that and to get to your question. So that's something that, other negatives too, but that was one of the things that I, like kind of missed the mark, I think. And I'm not an expert on the feminist movement or anything like that. But I think it also gave, I'm in my 30s, and I think it gave women in their 30s, even 40s and stuff like that now, like that generation, millennials, Gen X, even this like girl power, go out, be super independent sort of thing, which, yes, can be really great. And women should be, even if you're traditional conservative, all of that, we should be self-reliant and self-sufficient and educated and stuff like that, right? And but I think there was this idea of like almost lessening the beauty and the value and the like how amazing it can also be to like have a family and be a mother and like all those more traditional feminine things, right? Or stereotypical feminine things. And so that's why I think, long story short, if you will, the boss babe movement and all of that came from a lot of those things, of this like hyper independence for women and like, who cares? You don't need a man. Go like do it all yourself. Which, sure, yeah, maybe you don't need one, but it is like, I don't know. I am a lot happier with a good man in my life than not a good man, but I'm not never going to settle for a relationship just to be in a relationship, right? But like, I love having a good man in my life and stuff like that. Like, it's amazing. It makes my life so much better and so much richer and like more incredible, And so I think there was this like push for hyper independence and go do your own thing that kind of lost sight of, oh, and this is also a beautiful part and option to being, of being a woman. So I think the boss babe culture kind of came as a result of that. And, if that if that answers, we can go from there, but that's I think where it came from, a lot of it.
Yeah. I think our culture just we always, not always, that's a wrong word, but most of the time we overcorrect on certain things.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that's where sort of the thing happens. Like nowadays, there's a narrative that men are just hairy, misbehaving women. So we've sort of gone all the way to the other side of the spectrum where like, okay, women should be more like men so they can be independent and do all these types of things and they have choice and they can do all that. That's great, amazing, cool. Now we're so far removed that men now are just should be acting more just like women so we can have more of a
Yeah.
civilized society. And I think all of it is totally fucked up. It doesn't give
Yeah.
people the right direction in life. It doesn't allow them to explore different parts of themselves and different seasons of their life and all these
Yes.
types of things that might be true. But that's sort of a more
Well,
nuanced conversation. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, and to your point with that too, it's, I think because of that, like, and yes, I think the correction and like overshooting it, right? Not finding the nuance and the balance of it for sure. And so a lot of women like my age or even a little bit older and some even younger have had this like, you go do your thing and almost like then don't even think about a man in your life, which is like, wait, but what if you want to get married and have a husband and like have that be a really beautiful part of your life? You should think about it too. Like, and with that, with the men and how men are being treated and kind of discourse around men, the like there was a lot of talk, and I don't know if I see it as much currently, but there was a lot of talk, I think more around 2020, if you will, like around toxic masculinity, like a lot of that. And yes, there is such a thing as toxic or like unhealed, wounded masculinity, just like there's such thing as toxic femininity, right? Like both of those things exist. But what I saw was a lot of things that would be considered more just traditional masculinity were just automatically being called toxic no matter what. And so to your point of like, yeah, men are being told or expected to act like women, that's also not right. No,
Mm.
men are men, women are women, right? And while there's so much variety within that, like there isn't just one way a woman should act and just one way a man should act. Like, no, there still tends to be like those traits. Like we can find some themes, if you will, and stuff like that. And no, men shouldn't be just behaving like women, just like women shouldn't be expected to just behave like men either. And so I think men the last few years, maybe kind of in the early like 2020, 2021, 2022, maybe, I think men were getting shit on a lot, right? Like everything was toxic masculinity, even when I don't think it was necessarily. But I feel like, and I'd be curious your perspective on this as a man, I feel like that's shifted in the last like year or two, where more like traditional masculinity is being more appreciated and respected and valued more publicly, at least. What do you think?
Yeah, I think because, um, to get very frank, the suicide rates have become
Mm,
so alarming that men are 4 times likely to die by suicide than
mhm,
women, that people, culture have finally started to notice that young men specifically need help. And
mhm.
so, like you're saying, if the phrasing while I'm a 16, 17, 18-year-old boy is that everything I do is toxic no matter what if I'm like a really good brother and I'm a really good son and I do chores around the house and I like take care of my shit and I go to school and I come home and I play on a sports team. I'm like trying to be the best version of myself, but no matter what, my essence is toxic. Well, then of course I'm going to just
Mhm,
remove myself from society, whether that be behind screens and porn and OnlyFans or literally actually remove myself, which is very, very,
mhm.
very scary. And so, thank God for people doing the work in sort of the public space to say, hey, men need our help. And now it's more of a conversation. Okay, what can we do about to help them? What are the tools, the resources, the
Yeah,
role models, the conversation? And then I heard this great analogy about masculinity, and it can be applied to femininity as well. But they're both like a hammer. A hammer can be used to build a home. You're in real estate, you understand, right? It can be used to build a home, or a fucking hammer can be used to smash a person in the fucking head.
yeah,
It's in the person who beholds that. So it's not really the energy is not necessarily toxic. So the human being is not necessarily toxic, but the energy itself can be wielded in a divisive or horrible way. And I think when
mhm.
men start to get that messaging, because I work with a lot of young athletes, like I'm going to tell them, if they're getting this sort of messaging when they're 13, imagine where they're going to be at when they're 18 if they get 5 years of the same bullshit over
Yeah,
and over and over. Like you're nothing, you're worthless. Then okay, well, what's the fucking point then, Lauren? Why would I
right.
go out and talk to a girl or get myself or take a shower or go to the gym or do fucking anything to better myself? And then you
Yeah,
have a society that's doesn't have strong, capable men, and that's like probably the worst fucking thing you can have in case catastrophic things happen. You need men. Men are very valuable and
mhm.
important and strong and all those types of things, but you have to encourage that in them. And also, men need to go on a tangent, I guess. Men need places to express their excellence. I think that's really important.
Yes.
And I don't know if they have those domains yet outside of like the sports field, which is where I come from. So I see a lot of that on a regular basis. But I don't know about the young men who don't have that domain or never gone to that domain. Where are they able to express their excellence or show that they have
Mhm.
value? Because you know how awful dating apps can be for quote unquote the average male. Well, where am I supposed to show myself then to a woman that I'm funny or kind or compassionate,
Yeah,
have a good job, all these types of things, if I'm not like traditionally sort of quote unquote handsome?
right.
That's at least what I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever
No,
you want to say from there,
absolutely.
go for it.
And I think with that too, if we're talking about kind of dating and stuff like that, it's like so I think and I can see the arguments on both sides, right? Like so many women, because like, yeah, there's been plenty of women, like unfortunately, like most women have had a very severe and like negative experience with a man in their life, right? Whereas I don't know that a man would have that, like most men would not likely have that, right? Maybe emotionally, but not like physically or like sexual trauma and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
so with women though, like, so many women be like, ew, he looked at me, like, so I yelled at him, like that sort of thing. And it's like, really? Like, because he looked at you? And so I see a lot of women being like, why won't men just approach women more and stuff like that? And da da da, like complaining about not being approached in real life and stuff like that. And it's like, well, because so many men are hearing and seeing that if they don't do it just right, exactly how you want it or whatever, they don't say the exact right thing, they're going to get screamed at, they're going to get blasted on social media, they're going to be called all these names, that sort of thing. So of course they're not going to approach that much. Because like cuz and I've seen too like where it's like a guy just like maybe flirting or saying like, "Oh, you're really beautiful." Like the number of times I've seen things, because obviously I do a lot in the dating space with women. I've seen so many things like come across my feed on social media where it's like women sharing their text interactions or their dating app like back and forth conversations with men, and women just being so strange in how they're like a man's trying to flirt with her, and not in a like, yes, if a man's being rude, disrespectful, that's not what we're talking about. But a man being like, "You look so beautiful in that dress," and then the woman's reaction being like, "Oh, so you're here to objectify me?" And it's like, "Whoa, what? What? Like, relax. Aren't you on a dating app? Don't you want the guy, like a guy to think you're cute and flirt with you?" And so when men are who have good intentions, because there are shitty women, yes, and there are shitty men. So we're not talking about those. Those shitty men who are douchebags and assholes, they get left behind. They are not included in this conversation. But the men who have good intentions and are respectful and want to like all of that, like of course they're not wanting to approach women and stuff like that, because a lot of them are seeing that that's like not a good idea. And a lot of women's reactions, I think, in many ways are like a little extreme in and like in not justified ways. And not everybody, but you know, makes sense why they don't want to approach.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, as a man, approaching a woman just in general, if you haven't done it a lot, if you haven't built up the sort of the callus of rejection, is really hard nonetheless. When it was just
Yes.
like me going up to a woman at a bar and getting rejected, then going back to my buddies, like that was still really hard. Like they gave me shit for it, but ultimately they were like, "That
Yeah.
dude, that's cool. You tried,
Like
right?" And that was sort of the end of it. I didn't. Nothing ever happened after that. But now, if I fucking text, if I send a DM to Lauren on Instagram and we start to have a conversation, and suddenly things go weird and I say something that you don't like potentially or come off as creepy, now I'm on all of your 100,000 followers on Instagram. So not only did I get rejected by you, but I'm fucking rejected by literally the whole
publicly
universe.
humiliated. Yeah.
And that's fucked up. That's fucked up.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. And that's something too, like I don't think I've ever hit on a guy, or like I've never proactively given a man my number without being asked for it, or like yeah, I don't think I've ever like shot my shot. Which I'm like, "Really? Huh, interesting." But I can imagine, yeah, like if men are expected most of the time, right? And women who want masculine men like want to be pursued and a man to take action, all of that. Like the number of rejections a man in his life, an average man is going to face, that's a lot. Women would not enjoy that, right? So like I'm like, I thank goodness that's quote unquote the man's job to do that, because I wouldn't want to do that like that much at all.
Yeah, it's quite hard. I mean, that's why that's a really important skill if you're a young man to build up that callus, because you're going to get rejected from jobs, you're going to get rejected from girls, you're going to get rejected from almost anything in life until you get that yes, and then it's amazing. But you have to build up that strength. It's a skill, and so talk to as many people as humanly possible. Ask the you could ask dudes are going to reject you too. Some guy you want to go to coffee date or you want to get a workout with him because you think he's like jacked in the gym and you want to learn some things from him. He might also say no too. Like all of these things are just you building up your resilience to be able to eventually get that yes. And you know that as an entrepreneur, like that's the whole
Mhm.
fucking vibe. That's literally the vibe of almost anything. And of course we're talking about dating here, but it relates to pretty much all of your life. And I think also
Mhm.
what's an issue, sort of maybe you'll get your take on this. Someone who works with women in dating is like there's also a thing with social media that like I think forces people, not forces people, that gets people to sort of claim this sort of unearned moral virtue. Like there's this idea of like stated and actual revealed preferences. Like on social media, women might state that they want this, but then you look at who they're actually dating and their revealed preferences, and it's like this burly 6'2"
Mm.
fucking masculine guy with a beard. But on social, they're like, I want him to be, have the emotional side, and I want him to talk to me about all his feelings all the time, no matter what. And it's okay if he fucking cries in front of me on the first date. I'm like, none of that shit is fucking true. That's not true.
Yeah.
There's a time and place for all of that. I think men should be in touch with their emotions and have some emotional regulation, extremely important. But like I think that's also the disparity too of like you're trying to appease some sort of crowd that like thinks that this is what you should like, even though you actually do like this dude can fucking chop down a tree or whatever. I don't fucking know. You get my
Yeah.
point though.
Yeah, I do. And I think too, there is something with, and I'm all for like, get really specific with what you want and like dream about it, pray about it, like all of that, like very intentional. Like this is my ideal partner, all of that. And to not settle for less than what you want. And I think there's also a really important element of being realistic and with that. And so and I think a lot of women, and again, I see this a lot on social media discourse and stuff like that. I even see this sometimes with clients and even friends where they're like, oh, he did this one thing. I think I got the ick. And I'm like, really? That seems like a pretty minor thing, in my opinion. Like, and not important. Like, if you're really factoring in like a long term sustainable relationship, that thing that you just got annoyed by is really stupid. Like, get over it. Like, I think that's a you problem, actually, you know? And so I think sometimes there are like those sorts of things where I'm like, yeah, I want the like super masculine, burly, whatever it is, like super masculine, like kind of guy, but I also want him to be so in touch with his feelings and tell me, oh, right, like all that kind of stuff. A lot of the time, a man who is super, super, super masculine, yeah, he's not always going to be every single day wanting to communicate his feelings, because if he's wired in those other ways to do all those like quote unquote masculine traits and behaviors and actions, that stuff probably isn't as developed or might not be as like forthcoming as you might want, right? So like also just the reality of understanding people and understanding men is something I think a lot of women are um in this place of not necessarily being a delusional, though I'm sure there are plenty, but in this place of like not always being realistic. And I don't want that to be mistaken for me saying you should settle, because that's not what I'm saying at all. But I think what I would say is like, okay, this like having this sort of not high standards, but such rigid expectations and ideas of what you want. How is that working? Like, is that working well for you? Are you getting results from that? Because if
Yeah.
not, then maybe that approach isn't effective. And maybe you get to adjust a little bit with things that you want, right?
Yeah. What is what's some other advice, or I don't know, advice is probably the wrong word because every person is very specific that you work with, but maybe some insights you would share with a woman who's trying to find a man or get more into her feminine energy on all those types of things. I mean, what are those conversations like? What do you think women need
Yeah.
to work on potentially more? And then we'll
Mm.
get to the man side as well.
Yeah. So I think with women, it's a few things. If you're like, okay, I'm so clear on the kind of man that I want. He needs to be X, Y, all these amazing qualities, right? And this kind of goes back to the like being realistic side of things. But if you want a man like that, great. Like that's your right, and I hope you get a man like that, right? But you need to then also put yourself in his shoes or keep in mind, okay, if that's the kind of man that I want to be with, what kind of woman does that man want to be with? And that doesn't mean you then change who you are, right? Or pretend you're something that you're not. No. But it means, okay, if I want a man who is really financially stable and all this kind of stuff, does that mean you have to bring the same amount of money? No, that doesn't. But does a man who's really financially stable and responsible with his money and has money and stuff like that, who maybe could give you the opportunity to not have to work, all of that, does he want to be with a woman who is not responsible with her money? No, he doesn't. So you may not, and this is just a very specific example. So you may not be making a ton of money, and that's okay. But if you're spending excessively, if you have a bunch of debt that you're not managing and you don't have a game plan to be like all those sorts of things, are you a match for a man like that? Right? Like, and again, this is just a really specific like example of it, but probably not. So either you need to do the work on your end to tighten things up for yourself. And again, that doesn't mean, but oh, now you need to make as much as him. No, it's not an apples to apples sort of thing that you have to do. But keeping in mind, okay, like, oh, yeah, that would make sense that a man like that, who's worked very hard for his money and all that kind of stuff, he doesn't want to be with a woman who might feel like a liability financially because of how her habits with money are. Similarly, yes, you may have this really amazing list. Oh, I want a man who's super fit and like active and like health conscious, all that kind of stuff. Okay, what standard in that category are you holding yourself to? And again, it doesn't have
Mm.
to be the exact same thing, but is health and wellness and fitness, is that a priority for you? Because if you want a man who prioritizes that, how are you prioritizing that? What standard are you holding yourself to? That doesn't like, and again, it doesn't mean like, well, if he goes to the gym 5 times a week, so do I. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to be able to look at it. Okay, if I want this kind of man, what kind of woman does he want? And am
Mm.
I pursuing that for myself, right? What standard am I holding myself to? And that doesn't mean you have arrived at those things, right? Like you can be a work in progress. Absolutely. I'm not saying, oh, you have to have it all figured out and then you'll be ready for that amazing man. No. But are you taking action to improve yourself to be the best for yourself and the best version of you? Are you taking an active role in that for yourself? Right. So that's
Yeah.
one of the biggest things, I think, because something I do see a bit, not with the women that I work with, because they work with me because they want to grow and are open to being, to being like held accountable and stuff like that. But I see this sometimes on social media, even when I say things like that. Like I've put out posts like, okay, you have this list, that's amazing, but are you holding yourself to a high standard as well? And women be like, if he doesn't want me like this and he doesn't deserve me. I'm like, okay, like, okay, fine, but it's that sort of thing where like a man like that, he probably wants a woman who holds herself to high standards as well, in her own way, in your own way. So that's one thing that I would say is a big thing to really reflect on for yourself. Um, Yeah, and I think with, like, feminine energy and things like that, so that's, like, a big one. For women, I always encourage women, do more of what makes you happy and what lights you up and what your passions are, and so I think a lot of women are like, "Okay, I need to, like, go here because I might bump into men, or I need to go here, I need to do this because what if the man I'm supposed to meet is there, that," right? Like, all of that, like, that's coming from a scarcity mindset, and that kind of, like, anxious energy is not attractive for, like, anything. You're not gonna attract, like, a high quality man, like your dream man when you're in that like searching for him kind of frantic energy. That energy in and of itself is just repellent for many, many things, opportunities, work, business, whatever. Right. So making sure that even if you so deeply would like to be in a relationship, have a boyfriend, husband, family, whatever it is, even if that's such a deep desire for you and you don't have it yet, not making the absence of that be something that preoccupies you, right? So still being like, okay,
Mm.
this is where I'm at right now. He's not here yet, but I'm like so excited for when he gets here. What today would make me feel really good? What today would make me a step closer to being the best version of myself? So going with that kind of attitude and mindset, like of abundance, possibility, growth, and like really looking to like fill yourself up as much as possible, not this scarcity kind of like desperate energy, even if he's not here yet, even if you really want that. That's a big thing that is going to make a big difference in who you attract.
Mm. Yeah, speaking on that first point that you made, like I'll give an example about my wife and I that I found very interesting. So we have a 12-week-old son. He's probably going to be older. He's not probably. He's going to
By
be
the
older
time,
by the
yeah.
time this episode drops. Uh, but anyways, during my wife's pregnancy, she worked out like she normally does. Basically, she did a home workout like 24 hours before she gave birth, and she's a fucking beast. And we were at some sort of wedding, whatever. And my wife was probably like 5, 6 months pregnant. And one of the guys asked me if my wife is still working out. And I was like, this was my response. I said, yeah, she's not allowed not to. And he looked at me I'm a psychopath. I'm like, I don't control her, but like that's a non-negotiable in our
Yeah.
relationship. She's not allowed not to, and I'm not allowed not to either. Like that's just part of who we are as a relationship. We've made those vows and commitments to each
Mhm.
other. And barring some sort of catastrophic injury, God willing, God bless, that doesn't happen. That's what we're going to do. We're going to try and take care of each other,
Mhm.
and take care of ourselves. And so he looked at me like I was an insane person because I had said it. Maybe I could said it in a weird way, like she's not allowed not to, but like I'm not allowed not to either. And I think that's important in when you're trying to build a relationship. When I was trying to meet my wife, like that was something that's really important that we talked about very early on. Like, I'm going to work out. I'm going to take care of myself. She's like, that's a value for me too. Okay, cool. Let's write that down as something we can check. Like, that's important to both of us. What's next on the list? And I think you have it exactly right. It's like, what is really fucking important to you? And then go from there. Like, is
Mhm.
religion important? Do you want to raise your kids with the same religion or values? Like that was important to my wife and I because we're Jewish and like things like that. And it's like those are the important factors, not like I don't know what like meaningless shit could be. It's not in my
Yeah.
brain, but you get my
Above
point. Yeah,
6 foot, right? Like
yeah,
all these things. Like, sure, that's fine. And like, I hope you get it. And like knowing what are the like, okay, in the long run, like, is that a key ingredient for happy, healthy, sustainable relationship? Not necessarily. Like, yeah, so those like silly kind of things. Yeah. And I love the like, yeah, she's not allowed to not work out sort of thing and how people, oh gosh, women would be like, excuse me, right? Like so many people take that a certain way, but I have those kinds of conversations with my boyfriend, right? Of being like, yeah, like neither of us is like, no, like I'm not gonna because it's not necessarily about the like how you might look or gaining a few pounds or anything like that, right? And I'm sure obviously like she's pregnant. If she has a week where she's like, I'm exhausted, I need to just relax, it's fine, right?
of
And
course, yes,
but the sort of thing where I'm like, no, if I and my boyfriend and I have had this conversation both ways, him to me to him. I'm like, yeah, because if you decided to like stop exercising, either one of us, I'm like that eliminates things that I'm attracted to you, like, because not only, like, physically might things change in not a good way, but I'm like, I love your discipline, your consistency, the fact that you prioritize your health, because I know that, like, those qualities contribute to you being successful and you being consistent and showing up for me. Those qualities and those habits uh like lead to you being alive for a long time, which is something I want, right? And so if that no longer becomes a priority for you, that's a problem for us. Same with me, right?
yeah, certainly. Okay, so we talked about a little bit of things that women can do. I also want to sort of if men are listening, they can maybe understand what sort of qualities they might try and possess or embody if they're trying to attract a strong, feminine female, or whatever the case may be. What should they be doing? How should they be acting? What are some of the things that you've seen that women might find
Mm.
attractive?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say very feminine women. And I know I hear a lot from men is like they want a woman who's really feminine. They want peace and that kind of stuff. And I could have a whole big conversation on the like men want peace thing and get into that. I won't get into it a little bit right now. But a lot of men, yes, wanting peace and want to be like a level of unconditionally loved and loved for who they are, because men are generally valued and loved and respected, acknowledged for what they do, right? So men want to feel that they're loved for who they are from women, uh, right? And but men who want that and want a really feminine woman, to get that, women like that. They want a man, generally speaking, that is assertive, that's a leader, that is a man who takes action, right? So, like taking action, being consistent. So, action, consistency, super important, right? And a woman like that is also, and I think a quote unquote high quality woman is also going to very much pay attention to whether what you say is backed up by your actions. as well.
Mm.
So if you're saying things like, oh, I'd love to take you to dinner soon, and then you're not making a plan to do that, every single time that your words are not backed up by action, she loses confidence in you and will be less interested in you always. And so really sticking to your word, incredibly attractive, and unfortunately, like, not as common as it should be, right? I think these days. So being a man of your word, huge, 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 huge. And then being a man of action, right? And so like, say, like, if you want to take her on a date, planning the date. And that doesn't mean, because I know there's a lot of women that are like, do everything like 8 p.m. Reservations are made. Like, I'll pick you up this time. And yes, women do like that. That is a good power move, right? Like, let's go on a date on Friday. Are you available at 7? Great. And then following up with, okay, I booked a restaurant. I'll pick you up at this time. Da, 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 right? That is so sexy. And it's so simple, you guys. Planning a date, I don't know. I think it's so simple and it goes a long way. If you can like plan through all those details. So she just gets to like show up and be like impressed and get to spend time with you. So like the proactive planning and making a plan, a huge thing. And I think in the little details, and this goes for women as well with men, but like if you hear her talk about how much, I'm just going to use an example. I love riding horses. I get to ride horses every week and stuff like that. But if you hear a girl talking about like, oh, I love riding horses. I used to do it when I was younger. I haven't done it in so long. That would be so much fun. You hear her talk about that. And then you plan a date that's taking her horseback riding, like those sorts of things. And it doesn't need to be something that big, right? It could even be like, oh, I ran out of my favorite sparkling water. And then the next time you see her, you bring her a can or a box of it from Trader Joe's or something like that, right? Those sort of thoughtful things with you taking action or even just remembering something like that goes a long way, those little details. And I lost the other thing I was going to say. Oh, the peace, right? So men wanting peace, part of being with a very feminine woman is that she is going to have a lot of emotions. Now, I am not in any way uh, familiar with that myself. um, she's going to have a lot of emotions because a woman who is really connected with her femininity, she is connected with her emotions. Now, that doesn't excuse women to be emotionally volatile or emotionally reactive, right? It's not an excuse. Oh, I'm just so feminine and I'm a woman, so I'm going to go wild sometimes, right? That's not an excuse because for women, they need to be a master of their emotions, in tune with their emotions. And being in tune with your emotions does not mean you're at the mercy of them and that they'll just swing you whatever direction, right? But knowing as a man, yes, like women, we are operating on a 28, 30-day cycle. And literally every day, sometimes every week of the month is a different emotional and hormonal experience for a woman. So there's going to be a lot of variety for us. And women are going to experience, especially feminine women, a lot of emotions. Now, the part where you come in for this, because like I said, it's a woman's responsibility to be in tune with herself, to understand herself, and not to react from emotion in a way that will be chaotic or destructive, right? That's her responsibility. But where you can really, really show up is to keep in mind, oh, these natural like fluctuations and ups and downs, that's kind of normal. Depends on who she is, right? But kind of normal and to be expected. But then your ability to stay grounded in the face of a woman having highs and lows is very, very huge. Right? Like if she's like, oh my gosh, this happened, and you think it's not a big deal, but she's like so sad and crying over it, like might be using some personal examples. My boyfriend's like, it was a little thing, but it hit you big. I'm like, yeah, but it might be a little thing that happens. And she is crying. She is so upset and talking to you about it. One of the best things you can do in that situation is to stay steady, right? To not let her emotions rock you. Right. And so thinking of like in these sorts of like a good analogy for this is like a woman's like the ocean. Right. And again, we talked about the hammer. Right. So ocean or water, it can be like a small stream, that sort of thing, or it can like destroy stuff, And so when her waves are going a lot, you being able to be a really solid rock, like literally that the waves crash against, is such a huge thing. And that doesn't mean you don't get wrapped up in her story and her emotions. You do your best. And again, it's not, she's accountable for this too, but you do your best to not get triggered by her emotional ups and downs. You stay steady. And something that's really helpful too is to ask, like, hey, what do you need right now? You're upset, you're overwhelmed, you're being like, a lot's happening emotionally for you. Do you want me to help find a solution, or do you just want to vent to me? Right? Because sometimes, and I know this for many women, myself included, if I'm feeling really stressed and I'm crying and I'm venting to my man, if he immediately goes into problem solving mode, well, you should do this, that almost feels more stressful because I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed already, and you're now giving me a to-do list. And I'm like, right? So either I'm like, just listen to me vent for 10 minutes and then give me ideas, or fix the problem without talking to me about it. Right. Like, and so that is what I would say is like, really being steady in the face of a woman's emotions. That doesn't mean she gets to act however she wants at all, or not have accountability for her emotions, but your strength and steadiness will go a long way. Because, and I'll break it down for why that is in a woman's mind. If I like my I'll use my relationship for an example, or just generally. Like my man is very, very masculine, like in many, many ways. And so if you're a very masculine man, or that's what you strive to be, right? Me as a woman, I want to know that my man can like kill any bear that's out there, right? Metaphorically speaking, like he can handle anything. He's going to protect me and keep me safe from all the things, no matter what. Right. Like that's the idea that I want to have in my head of him, whether it's true or not. Right. But that's how I want to feel with my man, and how most women want to feel. If me having a meltdown is enough to make him get like lose his shit, or get completely stressed, or like so overwhelmed, I'm like, he can't even handle little me. Right. Like
Mm,
that's not, I want to be clear, that's not logically completely what's going on in our minds. But on a subconscious level, that's kind of what's happening. It's like, he can't, I'm having this big experience and he can't even handle, like, I'm going to blow him over with my emotions right now. Then he's not anchored enough. Right. And so that's one of these things that's like, when a woman is feeling these really big things, your ability to stay grounded in it is so huge, and takes practice. It takes practice.
yeah, that's really, really, really good point. Like, I think just based on that idea of peace, like men do want peace, but you're
Yeah.
only going to get that peace is if you as a man can provide the safety for a woman to be able to turn her brain off.
Yeah.
Like that is such a superpower, and not something you can develop after like a first date, right?
Hmm.
It takes, some practice getting to know one another. But when that woman does, when she sees you, or when she hugs you, or when she feels your body, and she can just like take this like sort of deep breath, this sigh, and her brain shuts off, and the overwhelm goes away, and the anxiety about this and that, even though you probably have so much shit to do and everything's going on and the fucking house is on fire and the kids need this and there's fucking Legos everywhere and all this type of shit is happening, and she can just be for a moment.
Yeah.
That right there translates into peace when you walk in the
Yes.
house from work, or when you see her. That whole, it's sort of, it's all these things you're talking about. You mentioned it before. Like if you want something in your life, you sort of have to represent it yourself first.
Hmm.
So if you want a woman who can bring peace into your life, well, you have to be able to stand firm on your ground and provide her enough safety emotionally, like physically also, but that's less kind of important. Like,
Right.
that doesn't really happen as much anymore, thank God. But enough emotional safety where she can do all those things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's very important.
Well,
Anyways, anything off that?
and no, and I was going to say with that, like, yes, you're exactly right. And again, it doesn't remove accountability for either person, for a woman's emotions and how she's showing up either. She gets to own that. But like what I said before, like the proactive planning, right, and being a leader in that way and attentive, that translates to peace in a woman's mind. Oh, he's got it. He's got it handled. He's making a plan. Oh, I don't have to like, oh, that feels so good to have that like plan. I don't have to think about it, right? And the consistency, I mentioned consistency and being a man of your word, those things translate to safety for a woman. And the safer a woman feels, the softer she will be. right? So the safer a woman feels, the softer she will be, and the
Mm,
more energy she will have to pour into you.
mm. Lauren, I think though an interesting thing about you though that maybe this could be cool to break down is that you run your own
Yeah,
business, you're an entrepreneur, you have many things going on. So from maybe the potential outside looking in, you could be considered a boss babe.
I know.
But
Just, I
uh,
know.
but you also seem to be very in your feminine energy, as you've stated. So how do you sort of reconcile those things? If a woman sort of maybe is forced to be in her masculine, like my wife was, like she had to be out on her own,
Hmm.
she had to be independent, she had to get all this shit done. And so it was like she didn't have any other choice. And then till maybe potentially she met me. It's not saying I've changed her life, but she definitely saved my life. So I'll just say that. But like, and then sort of she's molded a bit, but she still has to be a little masculine at work because she's a manager,
Yeah,
and then she has feminine energy at home. So how do you sort of teach women that maybe they can have both, or where does one place in another, and maybe how do you do it in your
absolutely.
own life, anything like that?
Yeah. And so it's not about being just one or the other. It's about finding the balance that works best for you, that makes you feel the best and also makes you most effective for what you need to do and like produces the results that you want to see. Right. So it's finding that balance. And so there are days for me because, yes, uh, right now I own 2 businesses, but I run another one. I help run another one. So I merged one of my businesses earlier this year with another business. So I went from not working as much to working a lot more. The last 6 months, working a lot more than I had been, which a lot of the work too, because I'm in a very leadership role of a company. Um, I get to be in my masculine energy a lot in that role. And so more than I would like. And so for me, it's been a new season the last few months of like figuring out that balance and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm not used to feeling that. And so again, it's not like, oh, you should only always be in your feminine. No, not at all. You find a balance. There are certain days that are going to be more feminine, certain days that might be more masculine, you name it. And same with men. It's not about being only in your masculine energy always, right? You get to be in your feminine as well. And men might be hearing that being like, no, I don't want to be in my feminine, but your feminine is like is about intuition, right? It's about relating and connecting with people. It's about being tapped into your emotions and stuff like that, right? It's not like just girly stuff. Okay. So yeah, so with that, yes, I get like, yeah, I own businesses. I do well for myself, that kind of stuff. So technically I am a boss and a CEO and stuff like that, right? So I have the title, but I would say that I used to very much also be operating in that mindset of like go, 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 hustle and grind kind of mode, all of that. And be very much in my masculine energy. And so for me, I did a lot of the work to balance that out so that I can still be running businesses, be quote unquote successful in like the more traditional or like stereotypical sense. So that I can do that while not depleting myself. And I can also do that while still being able to dominantly be in my feminine energy. And I can do all that while also knowing, oh, today was a really like masculine heavy day. I need to clear some more time in my schedule tomorrow, or I need my man to take me on like a really like girly date that's going to help me like snap back into that zone and stuff like that. And so that's, you find that balance and you find that rhythm because yes, as women, like, and anybody, right? Like we're generally all paying our own bills and stuff like that. And you may want like a man who's going to do that and be a provider. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing and like such a gift to be able to receive from a man. But you also get to be self-sustaining. Like the high quality men that I have dated who are very masculine, provider, protector, that sort of kind of man, right? They don't want a woman who's just sitting around doing nothing. They want a woman who's smart, who is self-sufficient and all of that. Even if they're like, "Hey, I'll pay for everything. Don't worry about it." Right? Like you don't have to work if you don't want to. Like even if that's the situation, they generally don't want a woman who has no skills or education or like experience in life experience and stuff like that or like work experience, right? And so it's not about eliminating that part of you, but it's about finding the balance, you know? And so there are so many things like I would say for women, like just a few places to start with being able to do that is like getting in tune with your intuition and learning how to hear it and trust it more. That will is absolutely going to strengthen your feminine energy. Um, Getting more in tune with your body and your sensory experience, your sensuality. And that doesn't necessarily mean like in a sexual sense, but getting more in tune with your senses and how you're feeling. Um, Getting in tune with your emotions without letting them rule you. Expressing those things, how you're feeling, like emotionally, physically, you name it. And another thing too is being open to receive. So feminine energy is receptive energy. If we think about it, masculine energy is your penetrative energy, your action, linear energy, thinking, that kind of stuff. There's more, but those are just a few things. Whereas feminine energy is receptive and many other things, but that's a big kind of generalization for feminine energy. And so for that receptive energy, allowing yourself to receive. So for women listening, if you have trouble receiving a compliment from somebody, and it doesn't necessarily, and I'm not talking about necessarily like getting hit on or something like that. If your friends say like, oh my gosh, you're so good at XYZ, and your immediate reaction is say, no, no, I'm not, but no, you are, you're better than me at this. No, but like, I really like to push it off and stuff like that. You're blocking yourself from receiving like a beautiful gift in the form of a compliment that someone wants to give you. And so therefore you are actively shutting down and blocking feminine energy because you're so closed off from receiving. And if you're saying, "Oh, I want this masculine amazing man or whatever kind of amazing man to come into my life," not only are you blocked from receiving an amazing person to come in your life, but that sort of thing, you're blocked from receiving masculine energy too. More than just that, but if like you want a man who's going to take you on beautiful dates and who might give you the like beautiful choice to be able to work or not one day when you're married or have a family, like all these things, you're wanting him to pour into you and to give to you. If you can't even receive a simple compliment, why do you think you will be able to receive a man paying your bills or taking you on beautiful dates or getting you gifts or like helping give you this beautiful, beautiful life? So that's one of the things to really work on is how well do you receive too?
Mm, that's a good point. Yeah, you made a you mentioned earlier, like, men don't want a woman who just stays at home all day. It's like, men really like women who have their own hobbies, who have their own
Yes.
friends, who have their own passions. Like everyone connects with someone where you can see someone like Lauren, if me and you went to something and I saw you doing something that you really fucking loved, like, that would just make me excited to, like, be
Yes.
around you and to hear you talk about it because I know how excited it makes you. Like, that's cool. That's a vibe for everyone. Like, sometimes I catch myself watching videos on YouTube of people watching motocross. So I'm not actually watching the motocross. I'm actually just watching the people watch the motocross because
Reaction.
they get so fucking excited about it. And it's like, holy shit,
Yeah.
let's go. Well, I'm gonna try to get fucking excited about this because this is so cool. You just love it. Like, I want to
Yep.
message them and be like, tell me about your fucking motocross thing that you watch, you know? And I love professional wrestling. So I mean, I do that with my buddies all the time. But like, I also want a woman who has that type of interest in something and she's fucking just fired
Yeah.
the fuck up to tell me about it. She did
Yes.
this with her friend. She read this fucking sick book series. Like, let me tell you about it. Great. I don't give a fuck about
Yeah.
the book, but I'm so pumped that you have something that you really enjoy. Like, that's a cool vibe for
Yeah.
anyone. So don't think that as a person, you have to just like everything has to be this one human. Like we've been sold that lie, I think, in rom coms. But like it's super cool to have your own friends and all those
Right.
types of things. And
Yeah.
then you come together and you love that person and whatever. So I think that's also important too.
Well, and that kind of energy, like when you're excited about something and like in your zone and you're like just doing stuff that you love, that energy, just like you're saying, like you're watching people get excited about something that they like, that energy is magnetic. Like people want to be around somebody that feels that way and that's expressing that sort of thing. And so my point before with being like, women don't go out into the world being like, where's my husband? Should I go to this cafe or should I join this gym? Because what if he's there? Right? No, is to be like, doing the stuff that lights you up because the people, opportunities, you name it, potential men, whatever it is, they're going to be more drawn to you when you are filling up, like by doing things that bring you joy, you know? And so, like, when I met my man who is absolutely incredible, like literally everything on my list, the best, when I met him, and I've had seasons where I've gone through and been like, okay, I can't stay in as much because he's not just gonna knock on my door like this dream man, right? Like that sort of thing. Though, funny enough, I have like been walking my dog in my own neighborhood and like someone pulls over and I'm like, okay, I guess you don't have to go that far from your house though, right? But so I've had seasons where I've had that like almost anxiousness of like, oh, well, I need to make sure I'm putting myself in environments where this man that I'm interested could be, right? Like my potential dream man, right? I've had seasons for that. And that's not necessarily a completely bad idea, but what's the energy behind it that you're going into? And so when I met my man, I was out of that energy and I was just doing stuff that I was like, I had plugged back into church and was going consistently. I was hosting Bible studies. I was making sure I was riding horses every week. I was like all these things that made my life so full and so rich and so good for me.
Mm.
And then met him, and funny enough, we probably 6 months before we actually like went on a date had actually met, but for whatever reason that wasn't when, things happened. So it was like, oh yeah, when you're pouring into yourself, your vibration, if we want to say, rises, and that like joy that you're feeling and that wholeness that you're feeling, people feel that and they want to be a part of that, even if it's stuff that they have no idea about, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right on. Brilliant. Okay, maybe my final question to wrap us up. When did your faith become important or become important again to you, or has it always been important
Yeah,
to you? So what's that like? Because I think beliefs in religion and faith can be an extremely, extremely important part of
absolutely.
someone's life.
Oh, such a good question. I have like a two-part episode on my own podcast that I put out at the beginning of this year. So my first two episodes in 2025 for the like full deep story on this, the whole journey. But I would say I've always believed in God, and there's been times when that has obviously looked differently and felt closer and stuff like that. But I would really say I dove back in about 2.5 maybe years ago, like really, really intentionally. And this is a whole different like tangent story, but like I had like in early 2020, 2021, maybe even 2022 a little bit, had like started doing some like new agey type things, though I didn't think they were contradictory or incompatible with my own beliefs, which is very interesting. So started doing some of these things. And then, and then I would say about 2.5 years ago, really was like, wait, these aren't compatible with what I say my beliefs are. So like, what am I doing? Right. And so I had this like kind of like renewed um passion for my faith and stuff, and so started getting back into church, started reading my Bible and stuff like that, and so it's a very active part of my life. And um the pull back to that came from, there wasn't necessarily one clear aha moment or anything like that. There were a few along the way, but also kind of looking at like, okay, what is this practice or this habit? Is it helping me? And like, like, why don't I just lean on God? Like, let's see. Because I've been adding all these other little habits or practices or whatever the heck they are, right? Let's just lean on God and like jump in with both feet and see what happens. And it was amazing. Like so many things changed so quickly. It was very, very cool to see.
Hmm. And you consider yourself a Christian? Is that the denomination?
Yeah. Yes.
Beautiful. That's brilliant. And do you pray every day?
Yes.
Yeah, rock on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Brilliant.
Thank you.
All right, Lauren, is there anything maybe I failed to mention or failed to ask you that you just want to touch on before we jet off into the sunset?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I would say is one, amazing questions. This was such a good conversation. So thank you again for having me. I've really, really enjoyed it. And I'm excited to share it with my people and stuff as well. The only thing I would say is I have a lot of programs and stuff like that, like free and not free on my website. And for women listening, I have a really great like feminine energy texting guide as well. Or if you want to set up a call with me, you can do that on my website too. But no, I think we covered everything.
Sweet. Yeah, all that'll be linked in the description below wherever you're watching or listening. If you want to get in touch with Lauren, please do. But Lauren, thank you for the chat. Happy to know you. And
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.